Hello everyone, so today I'm going to be discussing about the fourth experiment of the Mechanics of Materials Laboratory course, which is the heat treatment test. Moving on to the introduction session. So, heat treatment is a method which is used to achieve specific properties in materials, especially metals, through the changes in temperature without altering their composition or the use of alloying. So, heat treatment basically influences the microstructure of the metals, such as FCC to BCC or FCC to BCT. As I have mentioned before, heat treatment allows us to influence and control the microstructure of metals, such as from FCC to BCC or from FCC to BCT. This property enhances the hardness, strength, and toughness of materials, making them more resistant to wear and deformation, and is useful to create things like knives and swords where high hardness is needed. Moving on to the section where I'm going to be explaining on how to process heat treatment's data and answering module questions. Moving on to the several types of heat treatment methods. So first we have quenching. Quenching involves immersing heated metal in a quenching medium, such as water, oil, air, or polymers. So basically during quenching, metal in austenite state, which is a state where metal is heated around the temperature of 800 to 900 degrees Celsius, is rapidly transformed into martensite, which is a state where metal forms a dense brittle microstructure, which brings an increase in hardness when it is quenched into a quenching medium, such as water, oil, air, or polymers. So quenching is basically used in an application where high hardness and wear resistance is crucial, such as mining equipment, machine parts, and cutting tools. So moving on to tempering. Tempering is a heat treatment process which is used to increase the toughness and reduce the brittleness in metals. So normally, after a material has gone through the quenching method, which is resulting in high hardness and brittle product, the material is then continued to be tempered using the tempering method, which result in high hardness yet less brittle material. So it is different from quenching, where you heat the material until the austenite form. Tempering heats the material below the critical temperature, such as which ranging from 150 degrees Celsius until 700 degrees Celsius, which then be hot and gradually cooled to solidify the microstructure. And this process reduces the brittleness and increase ductility of the material. So moving on to the normalizing process, normalizing involves heating metals to a high temperature, which is reaching the austenite form, and after that the material is being air cooled, or basically cooled with room temperature. So the resulting microstructure of the normalizing process is typically a fine perlite and ferrite, which balances the strength and ductility of the metals. Normalizing is basically used in order to make beams for constructions where strength and toughness are crucial. Moving on to the annealing method. So annealing method involves exposing metals to a high temperature reaching the austenite form for an extended period, and then is being slowly cooled, or basically cooled with a specific rate of cooling. The purpose of annealing is to increase the softness, ductility, and toughness of materials. This produces a microstructure such as coarse perlite, which typically has a low hardness compared to other microstructures. The applications of annealing in real life is usually used to make copper wires and jewelry. Moving on to the several types of material states, where I'm going to be discussing about the microstructures of materials which can be gotten as a result of heat treatment methods. So firstly, we have austenite. Austenite is a high temperature phase in iron-based alloys, especially carbon steel. Austenite only forms above 727 degrees Celsius or eutectoid temperature. Austenite has a Fessenden-Kubrick or FCC structure and can be transformed into martensite or perlite upon cooling based on the cooling rate. If the cooling rate is rapid, it becomes martensite, and if the cooling rate is medium to low, it becomes perlite. So austenizing related to heating the temperature above 727 degrees Celsius until it becomes austenite. This method is usually used to make steel parts that need strength and toughness, such as machinery components and automotive. Moving on to perlite. Perlite is a microstructure that composed of alternating layers of ferrite and cementite, which balances in hardness and ductility. Perlite often occurs during slow cooling of austenite via eutectoid transformation with carbon diffusion, which happens around 600 degrees Celsius until 700 degrees Celsius. So from austenite to perlite, if the cooling rate is low, coarse perlite with thicker layers, which has a property that is more ductile and high in toughness, will occur. However, if the cooling rate is faster, finer perlite with thinner layers, which has a property of hardness and more brittle, will occur. The application of perlite microstructure is railways, rails, and wheels, which needs a high hardness value, yet require a moderate amount of ductility. Moving on to the last microstructure that we're going to be discussing today is the martensite. Martensite is the hardest and the strongest microstructure in steel. However, it has a negligible ductility and very high brittleness. As I mentioned before, martensite has a very high strength and high hardness value with a very high brittleness as a drawback. So tempering is usually used in order to reduce the internal stress and improve toughness of the martensite steel. The applications of martensite metals is commonly used in cutting tools such as knives or even swords, or in automotive such as disc brake. Moving on to the time versus temperature graph for heat treatment processes, where I'm going to be visualizing the heat treatment methods from the fastest to the slowest. Using the time versus temperature graph for heat treatment processes, I'm going to be relating the time that each heat treatment method takes to cool down the metal, compare it to the results of the metal of each treatment. So for quenching, the cooling rate of quenching is the fastest, which results in martensite, which gives the highest hardness but lowest ductility metal. And compare it to the annealing, which has the slowest cooling rate. However, it results in a coarse perlite or ferrite, resulting in a very low hardness yet the highest ductility. In summary, in order to produce high hardness and low ductility materials, we use fast cooling, and in order to produce low hardness yet high ductility metals, we use the slow cooling. Moving on to the combination of TTT and CCT diagram of the treated specimens. So we can predict the properties and microstructure of each specimen in the lab based on the heat treatment that it is received. For specimen that is treated with water quenching treatment or method, as can be seen from the red arrow, it has a very fast cooling rate. Therefore, we can predict that the microstructure of the specimen is going to be martensite, and the time span to cool the specimen is only seconds. And since it is martensite, the characteristic of the metal will be hard, brittle, and has a high hardness and high strength. So for the specimen which is treated by normalizing, as can be seen from the green arrow, that the specimen is touching the CCT curve and fallen to the right side of the curve, we can conclude that the microstructure of the specimen will be transformed from austenite to fine perlite and ferrite, and the time span for the specimen is approximated around an hour. And the characteristic of the normalized specimen, it has a balance in toughness and strength. And for the specimen with the annealing treatment, as can be seen from the black arrow, it has fallen through the most right side of the curve, which we can conclude that the microstructure has transformed into ferrite and coarse perlite. The time span for annealing specimen is approximated to last overnight, and the characteristics of the specimen should be softer and more ductile. Moving on to the stress strain curve comparison of austenite versus martensite steel. So for the austenite steel, I'm going to be using the 316 austenitic stainless steel, and for the martensite steel, I'm going to be using MS 1150/1400 steel. So by observing the two graphs, we can more or less tell the tensile properties and behavior between the austenite steel and the martensite steel. So for the Young's modulus, as can be seen from the linear elastic zone of the stress versus strain graph, it is concluded that austenite has a lower Young's modulus than the martensite. The same thing also applies with the yield strength, with austenite only has around 350 MPa yield strength, while martensite steel has approximately 1,500 MPa yield strength. For the plastic deformation, austenite has a significant strain rate before fracture due to its ductile nature, compared to martensite, which is brittle, have a very short strain rate before fracture. And the fracture behavior between austenite and martensite is different, where austenite, due to its ductile nature, necking before fracture will occur, compared to the martensite steel, which brittle, therefore minimal necking will occur. Lastly, from the toughness property, austenite, which has a high toughness, therefore being able to absorb energy, compared to martensite, which has a lower toughness, therefore being able to absorb less energy. Moving on to the analysis on the hardness test results of specimen which has gone through different heat treatments such as water quenching, annealing, and air quenching, comparing to the steel specimen which is untreated. So for the steel specimen which is untreated, the average hardness of the material is 51.5 HRA, whereas the quenched martensitic steel, which is gotten from the water quenching treatment, has the highest hardness among all the specimen here, valuing in 71,95 HRA. Moving on to the normalized steel, which has the hardness of 52,8 HRA, providing a balanced hardness that is higher than untreated steel, but is still lower than the water quenching specimen. So moving on to the last specimen, which is the annealed steel, the hardness of the annealing specimen is around 48,7 HRA, which is the lowest hardness among all the specimens. Moving on to the discussion on the relationship between the hardness number of the steel specimen that is untreated, comparing it to the steel specimens that have gone through the heat treatment processes based on trusted literature. So as can be seen from the table, the untreated steel has a Rockwell hardness number around 31,4 HRC. So the hardness value of the normalized specimen increased by 33% or around 41,8 HRC. And the specimen which has gone through the annealing process decreased in hardness by 50,4% or around 15,6 HRC. And lastly, the steel specimen which has gone through the water quenching process increased in hardness by 128% or around 71,6 HRC. So according to the hardness tests that have been done in the lab and from trusted literature, we can conclude that the heat treatment method can affect the hardness value of a steel specimen. By doing water quenching and normalizing, we can increase the value of the specimen's hardness, and by doing annealing, it results in a decrease on hardness number of a steel specimen. So by using the same journal, we are able to view the changes in microstructure of the steel specimen due to varying heat treatments. So first of all, we've got annealing. So in annealing, the specimen cools slowly in the furnace, allowing austenite to fully transform into coarse perlite and ferrite with very large grain size, as can be seen from the image. This results in a very ductile material with minimal hardness. Moving on to the microstructure changes due to normalizing. So in normalizing, after cooling the specimen in air or room temperature, fine grains are formed. The austenite has completely transformed into fine perlite and ferrite, and this results in the normalized specimen to be stronger than the untreated specimen. Lastly, we move on to the microstructure changes due to water quenching. So the water quenched specimens have relatively very small and fine grain size than the normalized specimen, since the steel has reached the martensitic stage. So before closing, I'm going to be explaining how the grain size affect the material's properties. So grain size can affect the material's mechanical properties, since larger grain size typically increase the ductility but reduces the strength and hardness of a material, while smaller grains enhance strength and hardness by restricting the dislocation movement within the material. So microstructures such as martensite and fine perlite usually has a small grain size and fine grains, which is useful to increase the hardness of a material because they have many grain boundaries which act as barrier to dislocation movement. This structure also enhances strength by restricting deformation, although it results in ductility that is less than the coarse grain microstructures. Materials with coarse grain size or larger grain size, like coarse perlite and ferrite structures, have fewer grain boundaries, which allows dislocations to move more easily, which gives the material lower hardness and strength. However, it also increases the ductility of the materials, meaning the material can bend or deform more before picking. Therefore, this material is ideal for application where flexibility and the ability to absorb impact are crucial. That's it from me. Thank you.